The entire hall fell into absolute silence in that instant. I stood in the center of the royal banquet hall, on a long velvet carpet, my fingers tightly clutching the fabric of my gown. My heart felt as if it were being crushed by an icy hand, and every breath carried a sharp, unbearable pain. My name is Isolde Vane. Today was supposed to be the grand ceremony announcing my engagement to Marquis Edmund and finalizing the royal alliance between our families. But this engagement was never born from love. It was merely the last bargaining chip that allowed the deck lining Vane family to survive. A contractual chain I had been unable to escape since childhood. I had already accepted my fate. I was willing to become a piece on the political chessboard, a tool to stabilize the power structure of the kingdom. Yet I never imagined that Edmund would personally tear everything apart before the eyes of the entire court. Edmund slowly stepped onto the high platform. His gaze swept across the gathered nobles before deliberately avoiding me and Lon Ding on Selena beside him. His voice was steady and powerful, cutting through the frozen air like a blade. Esteemed nobles, today I have an announcement to make. My engagement with the Vane family is officially annulled. Effective immediately. The entire hall erupted into an uproar. My body froze. My blood turned cold in an instant as I looked up at the man who was supposed to be my fiancé. For 3 years, I had honored our engagement contract. I had followed every rule, maintained his connections, and helped cover the weaknesses of his position in court. In the end, all I received was public abandonment. Edmund raised his hand to silence the restless crowd, his expression completely indifferent, without even a trace of guilt. This engagement was nothing more than a political arrangement between our families. It had nothing to do with true feelings. Now, I have found the partner destined to walk beside me for the rest of my life. Selena Rose will be my only fiancée from this day forward, and my future marchioness. Selena leaned against his side, her elegant expression perfectly gentle. Yet her eyes concealed undisguised pride and provocation. She slowly lifted her gaze and looked directly at me, silently declaring her victory. Selena's eyes carried a silent declaration of victory. Around me, the whispers of the nobles grew louder. Their mocking gazes and contemptuous remarks poured over me like a storm of needles, piercing every inch of my body. Those quiet words were more painful than any insults shouted aloud. I straightened my back, forcing down the bitterness and humiliation burning in my eyes. I could not cry. I could not lose my dignity. My guardian, the old Duke Vane, hurried to my side. His voice was lowered, but his anger and selfishness were impossible to hide. Look at what you've done. You couldn't even protect a simple engagement. The family raised you for all these years, and this is how you repay us. My throat tightened. I lowered my voice and asked, is it because I failed to protect it? Or because he never intended to keep his promise? Enough. The old Duke's expression darkened as he scolded me. Without this marriage alliance, the Vane family will be completely destroyed. Can you bear the consequences? Go apologize immediately. Beg Marquis Edmund to change his mind. Humiliation crashed over me like a tide. I had sacrificed everything for this family, and now, after being betrayed, I was expected to bow my head and apologize for someone else's betrayal. At the moment when I was trapped between despair and helplessness, a thin figure slowly lifted his head from the dark corner of the palace corridor. He was the beggar everyone in the capital despised. His clothes were torn and covered in dust. For years, he had curled up silently beside the outer walls of the palace, unnoticed and ignored by everyone. He was also the wounded stranger I had saved 3 years ago on a stormy night. At that moment, everyone's attention was focused on Edmund and Selena standing proudly on the stage. And on my humiliation. Everyone except him. His dark eyes were locked firmly on me. Those eyes did not belong to a lowly beggar. They carried an icy coldness, an overwhelming desire for control, and a hidden fury that existed only because someone had hurt me. My heart trembled for no reason. An unfamiliar feeling of destiny spread through my body like winter frost. Edmund looked down at me from above, his voice cold and merciless, completely destroying the last trace of hope in my heart. Isolde, stop clinging to something that was never meant to be. You and I were never destined for each other. This farce ends here. From this day forward. You have no connection with me or the Marquis. After saying those words, he turned away. He gently took Selina's hand and accepted the congratulations of the nobles. The noise of celebration returned. Only I remained standing there alone, abandoned and sinking into endless darkness. Meanwhile, the humble beggar slowly stood upright. Under the dim light and shadows, a faint but terrifying pressure quietly spread from his body. It was an aura powerful enough to make every hidden supernatural being tremble. No one noticed. Only I felt my heart suddenly race. I almost fled from the banquet hall. The burning shame and unbearable despair wrapped around my entire body like chains. Only when the cold wind of the palace corridor struck my face did I barely manage to suppress the tears gathering in my eyes. Behind me came the faint but cruel laughter of the nobles. They seemed far more interested in watching me fall from grace than witnessing a grand royal alliance. I had long grown accustomed to the cold eyes of the world. But Edmund's betrayal today tore apart the disguise I had carefully maintained for years, turning every moment of my patience and sacrifice into a humiliating joke. I clenched the edge of my skirt and walked quickly toward the quiet corridor outside the palace, wanting only to escape the countless watching eyes and mocking voices. But the moment I stopped, a lazy yet arrogant female voice came from behind me. Isolde, why do you look so miserable? I did not turn around. My voice was calm and cold. Move aside. Move aside. Selina laughed softly and stepped closer. Her luxurious gown dragged elegantly across the floor, and her face carried the careless confidence of a victor. Behind her followed 2 guards from the Marquis, making it obvious that she had come here deliberately to humiliate me. This engagement never belonged to you. Edmund never loved you. He married you only because he needed the remaining influence of the Vane family to strengthen his military position. Now that I can offer him greater support, your abandonment is only natural. My fingers trembled slightly, hidden beneath my sleeve. My hand tightened into a fist. I understood better than anyone that our engagement had always been a transaction. But even a political transaction could still leave a wound when it was betrayed. A political alliance still requires trust and honor. I raised my eyes to her. My gaze remained clear and stubborn. He broke his promise. He betrayed his oath. That is not something you should be proud of. Honor. Selina looked at me as if she had heard the funniest joke in the world. In front of royal power and political ambition, honor is worthless. You possess nothing except an empty noble title. Your family has fallen. You have no support. And you carry a strange secret that no one else knows. So tell me, Isolde, what gives you the right to claim the position of Marchioness? Her words struck directly at my greatest secret. My heart suddenly tightened. Fear rose instantly from the depths of my soul. Did she know something? Had Edmund already investigated my background? Was that why he abandoned me without hesitation? At that very moment, when my mind was thrown into chaos, a deep, hoarse male voice suddenly echoed through the corridor. Silence. The voice was not loud, yet it carried a chilling force that seemed to pierce through bone and soul, instantly freezing all the noise in the corridor. Selina's expression changed dramatically. She turned around sharply and shouted, "Which lowly commoner dares to speak here?" From the shadows of the corridor, the beggar who had spent every day curled up in the corner of the palace slowly stepped forward. His worn-out clothes could not hide his tall and powerful figure. His lowered eyes lifted, revealing dark pupils filled with no trace of humility, only cold indifference, only unquestionable authority. It was him, the man I had saved 3 years ago. I stared at him in disbelief. The strange feeling in my heart grew stronger. At this moment, he was completely different from the poor, silent, and broken beggar I had known. Do you know that insulting others without reason and using your power to oppress the weak is punishable by death? He looked at Selina. His voice was calm, yet his presence carried an overwhelming dominance that crushed everything around him. Selina was both furious and frightened. You are nothing but a worthless beggar wandering the streets of the capital, and you dare speak to me like this? Guards, drag him away and punish him. The guards behind her immediately stepped forward. But the moment they took a single step, their bodies suddenly froze. Their faces turned pale. Their entire bodies trembled violently as if an invisible force was pressing them into the ground. They could not move even an inch. My pupils contracted. This was impossible for an ordinary commoner. This was not the power of a mere wandering beggar. It was the unique aura of a high-ranking wolf clan member. The overwhelming presence of an alpha. Before I could react, he stepped forward. Under my shocked gaze, he slowly lowered himself onto one knee. His posture was not one of submission. Instead, it carried a solemn and sacred sense of destiny. His dark eyes locked onto mine, filled with a devotion and tenderness that no one else could understand. At that moment, a burning and mysterious bond suddenly pulled at my soul. My heartbeat became uncontrollable, deep within my bloodline. The omega mark that had remained silent for years suddenly grew hot and began to tremble. It was the mate bond, the destined soul connection between wolves. A bond decided by fate itself. My entire body froze. I could not believe what I was seeing. My destined partner was actually T.'s beggar I had casually saved 3 years ago. Isolde. My voice trembled, filled with confusion and disbelief. He looked up at me. The coldness in his eyes completely disappeared. What remained was a gentleness and certainty that belonged only to me. I have come to take you away. My Isolde. Not far away. Selena's face had already turned completely pale. She stared at the man kneeling before me, her eyes filled with disbelief and terror. And I. Amid the violent trembling of destiny, I suddenly caught a glimpse of something hidden deep within his eyes. A sharp, overwhelming presence that belonged only to a supreme ruler. The beggar I had saved without a second thought was not a helpless commoner. He was hiding an identity powerful enough to overturn the entire kingdom. The moment his destined confession fell, the omega instinct buried deep within my bloodline completely lost control. The mate bond of the wolf clan could never be wrong. It was the absolute law created by the moon goddess, a force that surpassed human marriages, worldly power, and every artificial contract. But I could not believe it. I could not accept it. I was an incomplete omega carrying a broken mark, a rejected existence despised by both worlds. My very existence was considered forbidden. I hurriedly stepped backward, forcing myself to suppress the burning pull deep within my soul. My voice trembled as I whispered, "You have mistaken me for someone else." The man remained kneeling. His dark eyes stayed fixed on me, filled with an intensity that made my heart ache. The powerful alpha aura surrounding him softened instantly. It no longer threatened anyone else. It existed only to surrender before me. "I have never mistaken you. 3 years ago, on a stormy night, at the abandoned temple outside the city, you saved me when I was on the verge of death. You ignored the dirt, the danger, and the forbidden rules. You treated my wounds, gave me medicine, and stayed by my side through the entire night. From the moment you touched me, the moon goddess sealed our bond. Our destinies were bound together forever." The memories of that night suddenly exploded inside my mind. 3 years ago, every supernatural clan in the territory was hunting him. Everyone avoided him, fearing they would become involved in his disaster. Only I, risking punishment from my own family, secretly carried him away. I cleaned his wounds, I gave him medicine, and I stayed beside him until dawn. Back then, I thought he was only a helpless stranger who had fallen into misfortune. I never imagined that my simple act of kindness would become the beginning of a destiny that would bind my entire life. Selena finally recovered from her fear, her face twisted with anger and humiliation as she shouted, "You are completely insane. A lowly beggar dares to claim a noble lady as his destined partner. Isolde is already bound by a marriage contract. She is a noblewoman chosen by the Marquis. You have no right to dream of standing beside her." The man slowly raised his eyes. His gaze swept over Selena. There was no anger, no emotion, only the cold indifference of someone looking at an insignificant insect. "An annulled engagement has no value." His words were simple and decisive, yet every syllable shattered Edmund's false dignity and exposed the painful truth I had tried to ignore. Selena was forced backward by his overwhelming presence. But she still refused to surrender. Grinding her teeth, she tried to provoke him. You don't understand anything. Isolde is an abandoned failure of the Vane family. She carries an ominous secret within her body. Anyone who gets close to her will eventually be dragged into disaster. You are only trying to attach yourself to her now. In the end, you will only bring destruction upon yourself. Her words struck directly at the deepest fear buried within me. My entire body stiffened. My fingertips turned cold. My broken mark. My forbidden secret. If it was exposed, not only would I die, but everyone connected to me would be hunted by both worlds. But in the next moment, the man who had been kneeling slowly stood. His tall figure immediately shielded me behind him. His broad back blocked every trace of hostility and every cruel gaze directed toward me. His deep voice carried an unshakable certainty. All the disasters she carries, I will bear them. All secrets she hides, I will protect them. I stared blankly at his back. The loneliness and suffering I had buried for years suddenly collapsed. Edmund possessed status and power, yet abandoned me the moment I became useless to him. But this nameless beggar, this man who had nothing in the eyes of the world, was willing to shoulder every danger for someone who had only shown him kindness once. He turned his head slightly. His gaze returned to me. All the coldness disappeared. Only tenderness remained. For 3 years, I stayed hidden here. I sought no fame. I desired no reward. I waited only for the day when you would finally escape your chains. Today, he destroyed your engagement and humiliated your dignity. So before everyone, I will give you the bond you truly deserve. My heart trembled violently. The omega mark within my blood burned with unbearable heat. Every instinct inside me urged me to move closer to him, to trust him, to accept him. This was the mate instinct carved into my soul. Impossible to resist. Yet my reason desperately held me back. I spoke softly, my voice filled with helpless struggle. You do not even know what secret I carry. If you protect me, you will only destroy yourself. His lips moved slightly. The words that left him carried absolute confidence. The certainty of a ruler who feared nothing in this world. There is nothing and no one in this world that can destroy me. The moment his words fell, hurried footsteps echoed from the far end of the corridor. The old Duke Vane arrived with a group of royal guards. His eyes were filled with anger and calculation. The moment he saw the beggar standing protectively in front of me, his expression darkened instantly. How dare you, commoner? You actually dare to approach Lady Vane and disturb the order of the royal palace. Guards, execute this man immediately. My pupils contracted. I instinctively raised my hand, wanting to stop them. But then I saw the change in the man standing before me. The tenderness in his eyes vanished. What replaced it was a terrifying killing intent, as if endless darkness had suddenly descended upon the world. In that moment, I understood. The old Duke's order to kill him had finally awakened the power he had hidden for 3 years. The old Duke's command echoed through the corridor. All the guards immediately drew their swords. The cold shine of metal filled the entire passage. They were human soldiers. Ey could not see the invisible pressure of a high-ranking wolf. They only followed orders, believing that the man before them was nothing more than a lowly beggar who had insulted nobility. My heart tightened violently. Without thinking, I stepped forward and stood in front of Karen. Stop. No one is allowed to hurt him. The old Duke's anger burned even stronger. His voice carried an undisguised threat. Isolde, are you still refusing to understand? For the sake of a commoner, you are willing to oppose your own family and offend the Marquis. Do you understand that your foolish protection of him will destroy the last foundation of the Vane family? I lifted my eyes and looked directly at him. The patience and obedience I had carried for years finally shattered. All these years, you used my engagement as a path toward power. You used my sacrifices to exchange for influence. You never once asked whether I wanted any of this. Now that I have been publicly abandoned, you do not care about my pain. You only care about blaming me. Is this the family you speak of? My words left the old Duke speechless. Then his expression slowly turned cold. He had never seen the obedient and weak Isolde dare to challenge him in front of everyone. Have you grown bold? He gritted his teeth. You carry a source of disaster within you. You should have remained obedient and accepted your fate. Edmund abandoned you because that is simply your destiny. But if you continue protecting this worthless commoner, I will reveal your true identity before everyone. I will expose the forbidden secret you have been hiding. Those words struck exactly where they hurt the most. He knew my weakness. He knew the broken Omega mark I carried was a chain that could destroy my reputation and my life. My entire body turned cold. My fingertips trembled uncontrollably. I was not afraid of death, but I was afraid that exposing my secret would bring disaster to innocent people. And even worse, I was afraid of dragging the man protecting me into the abyss. At that moment, when my resolve was beginning to collapse, Karen finally spoke. You dare. You dare. Only 2 words. No roar. No anger. Yet they carried an absolute authority that seemed to cross the boundaries between 2 worlds. The guards who had been ready to attack suddenly felt their legs weaken. One after another, they collapsed to their knees. Their swords fell to the ground with a series of sharp metallic sounds. An invisible alpha pressure swept through the entire corridor. This was the bloodline suppression belonging to the supreme ruler of the Wolf clan. A power that ordinary humans could never endure. The old Duke's pupils contracted violently. His face was filled with disbelief. He had lived for more than half his life. Yet he had never seen anyone suppress an entire squad of royal guards with nothing but their presence. Selena pressed herself tightly against the corridor pillar, her voice trembling uncontrollably. You. What exactly are you? Karen's gaze slowly swept across everyone. His presence was cold enough to freeze the air itself. The royal authority you rely on. The noble titles you are proud of. The military power you use to threaten others. Before me, they are nothing but dust. He turned slightly toward me. The terrifying pressure that had overwhelmed the entire corridor instantly disappeared. Only gentleness remained. Only the tenderness reserved exclusively for me. Do not be afraid. No one will ever force you again. No one will ever use your secret to threaten you again. I stared at him in shock. Countless questions surged through my mind. He had hidden himself for 3 years. He had disguised himself as a beggar. He knew everything. And he possessed power capable of crushing every human noble before him. Who exactly was he? The old Duke forced himself to suppress his fear. His voice shook as he shouted. Sorcery. You are an evil creature from another race. I will report this to the royal family immediately. They will send an army to destroy you. Karen let out a soft laugh. But there was no warmth in that laughter. Only cold cruelty. Destroy me. The military power of the human kingdom exists only because I allowed it. You want to use my own power to destroy me. My entire body trembled. My mind went completely blank. The human kingdom's military authority was controlled by him. Then the power Edmund relied on. The influence of the Marquisate. The political marriage that had controlled my entire life. The endless struggles that had suffocated me for years. From the very beginning, everything had been within his control. And suddenly, I realized an even more terrifying truth. He did not appear in my life 3 years ago by accident. He had hidden himself in the palace for 3 years. He had known about my secrets, my engagement, and my destiny from the very beginning. But if he knew everything, why did he never interfere? Why did he allow me to endure 3 years of humiliation? 3 years of suffering. 3 years of being publicly abandoned. Who was he really? Was he truly my destined protector? Or was he a ruler who had been watching me from the shadows and controlling everything all along? Karen's quiet declaration shattered everything I believed. I looked at him. Shock, confusion, and a faint trace of betrayal filled my eyes. If the military power of the human kingdom truly exists because of your permission, then you knew everything, didn't you? My voice was soft, but I could not hide the trembling inside it. You knew about my engagement. You knew Edmund's ambitions. You knew my family was forcing me You knew everyone was humiliating me. Karen looked at me deeply. He did not avoid my gaze. He answered honestly. I knew very thing. I knew everything. His direct answer felt like ice water poured over my entire body. The warmth created by the mate bond in my heart was instantly covered by cold suspicion. The old Duke collapsed onto the ground. All arrogance had disappeared from his face. His lips trembled. As he whispered, You are the supreme ruler of the wolf clan. The legendary alpha wolf king who has remained hidden from the world and maintained the balance between both realms. The words fell. The entire corridor became completely silent. Selena's pupils widened. Her entire body froze. All the pride and arrogance on her face vanished, replaced only by a fear that reached her bones. The lowly beggar she had mocked and insulted moments ago was actually the most powerful existence on the entire continent. A being no one dared to provoke. Karen ignored everyone else's fear. His gaze remained fixed only on me. I deliberate. Ely remained hidden. I deliberately watched from the shadows. But it was never because I ignored your suffering. Then what was it? I interrupted him immediately. My eyes carried hurt and unwillingness. Watching me be bound by an unwanted engagement. Watching me be abandoned in front of everyone. Watching my family use my secret to threaten me. Is that your idea of protecting me? My voice trembled. This was the most instinctive question from an Omega facing their destined Alpha. A bond chosen by fate should have meant protection. But he had watched me fall into darkness. Because of your broken mark. Karen's expression became serious. Every word he spoke was CLE-AR and heavy. The incomplete Omega mark on your body was not natural. It was a forbidden seal personally placed by the former elders of the Wolf clan. If that seal had been forcibly removed. If I had interfered with your life too early. Your bloodline would have gone out of control. And your entire existence would have been destroyed. My entire body trembled. I stood frozen. I only knew that my mark was forbidden. I never knew there was such a deadly truth hidden behind it. 3 years ago, when you saved me, you unknowingly weakened the seal. Karen continued. His voice carried a pain he tried desperately to hide. I remained in the palace for 2 reasons. First, to suppress the unstable power within your bloodline. Second, to investigate the truth behind the conspiracy that caused you to be falsely accused as a bloodline heretic. I lost all words. The suspicion in my heart slowly disappeared. So that was the truth. His silence was never cruelty. His distance was never indifference. He had been enduring very thing. Only to protect me. At that moment, Selena finally recovered some of her strength. A malicious calculation appeared in her eyes. She suddenly shouted, Isolde, listen carefully. You are a Wolf clan heretic. You carry a forbidden blood mark. If I reveal this to the royal family, you will still be sentenced to death. Even if he is the Alpha Wolf King. He cannot protect someone condemned by the Wolf clan. She was trying to use my greatest secret as her final weapon. She wanted to destroy my bond with Karen. But Karen only glanced at her. His eyes contained no emotion. The elder who sentenced you years ago has already betrayed the Wolf clan. The so-called crime of being a heretic was more than a conspiracy to seize power. He raised his hand. A faint wave of wolf power surged through the air. Selena's body was instantly restrained. You have repeatedly insulted my mate. You have crossed my final boundary. You should have been executed long ago. But I will spare our life. Because I want you to watch with your own eyes how everything you rely on collapses. The old Duke completely lost control of himself. When he heard Karen's words, his face turned pale. He immediately fell to his knees. Great Alpha Wolf King. I was ignorant. I was blinded by my own ambitions. I forced Lady Isolde because I feared losing the family's power. Please forgive me. I will never force Isolde again. I will remove every restriction placed upon her by the Vane family. Karen looked down at him with complete indifference. The kneeling of nobles, their apologies, their fear, none of it meant anything to him. To him, they were nothing more than insignificant dust. He slowly lowered himself closer to me. His deep voice became gentle and solemn. A voice meant only to calm the storm inside my heart. For 3 years. I endured everything. Only for this day. The chains of your engagement. The restrictions of your family. The accusations and humiliation forced upon you. I will destroy them all. One by one. I looked into his deep eyes. The mate bond within my soul resonated violently. My pain. My guilt. My confusion. My emotions. Everything intertwined together. At last. I understood. The protection that once seemed cold and distant had actually contained the deepest love and restraint. But just as I finally began to trust him completely, a faint flash of crimson suddenly appeared in Karen's eyes. His alpha aura trembled violently. A terrifying pressure spread through the air. I immediately realized something was wrong. His long-hidden strength had reached its limit. The years of suppressing his power had already brought him close to a dangerous backlash. And the person who had framed me 3 years ago, the true mastermind behind everything, had finally arrived at the palace gates. Karen's unstable aura tightened the entire corridor. This was not anger. It was pain. The pain caused by years of suppressing the backlash of his own bloodline. I instinctively reached out and touched him. The healing instinct of an omega flowed through our bond. My power gently soothed his violent alpha energy. In that moment, I finally understood. The suffering he carried was far greater than I had ever imagined. You have been forcing yourself to endure all this time, I whispered. All remaining suspicion inside me disappeared. Karen slowly calmed the blood-red light in his eyes. His fingers trembled slightly. A rare weakness from someone who had always stood at the top of the world. The backlash from your seal is connected to me. Every time I protect you, I must endure twice the pain myself. For 3 years. It has never stopped. My heart tightened painfully. I had always believed I was the only one suffering, but I never knew that every peaceful day I experienced was exchanged with the loss of his own strength and bloodline. At that moment, the sound of organized footsteps came from the end of the corridor. Edmund appeared. He wore full military armor. Behind him followed a large group of royal soldiers. His presence was powerful and arrogant. His eyes swept over the kneeling nobles, then finally stopped on Karen and me. His gaze carried anger and the arrogance of someone passing judgment. Isolde, I heard that you are hiding a commoner, challenging noble authority, and disturbing the order of the royal court. After being released from your engagement, instead of reflecting on yourself, you have become even more reckless. He completely ignored the overwhelming pressure surrounding Karen. He believed that his military power and legal authority still placed him above everyone. I will give you one final chance. Leave this commoner immediately. Kneel and admit your mistake. I can restore your remaining noble dignity and ensure the Vane family survives. The moment Edmund's RDS fell, the entire corridor became filled with an oppressive silence. I looked at the man standing before me, the man who had publicly destroyed our engagement, the man who had turned my years of sacrifice into a meaningless joke. And now, he stood before me, pretending to be the one who could judge my choices. A bitter smile appeared on my lips. Edmund, you broke our engagement in front of the entire kingdom. You abandoned me the moment I no longer benefited you. You chose another woman and humiliated me before every noble in the palace. Tell me, what right do you have to judge me now? My words made his expression darken, but he quickly regained his arrogance. The annulment of our engagement was simply the best political decision. His voice was cold and emotionless. You carried a hidden flaw within your bloodline. You were never qualified to enter the Marquis. I allowed you to keep your dignity. That was already my mercy. Those cruel words completely tore away his final disguise. So this was the truth. He had known about my abnormal bloodline from the beginning. This engagement had never been about affection. From the very start, I was only a tool he used to stabilize the power of the Vane family. And when I was no longer useful, I was discarded. Karen slowly stepped forward. His tall figure completely blocked me behind him. He faced Edmund's military authority without the slightest hesitation. Best political decision. To you, it was merely a calculated move. But to her, it was 3 years of suffering, 3 years of humiliation, 3 years of being trapped by a promise you never intended to honor. Edmund's brows tightened. His expression became filled with disdain. A mere beggar dares to comment on royal politics. Guards, seize him, punish him immediately. But no soldier moved. Every royal guard remained frozen in place, unable to take even a single step. Edmund's pupils contracted. For the first time, fear appeared in his eyes. Something was wrong. He finally realized that the man before him was not someone he could command. Who exactly are you? Karen lowered his eyes. His voice was calm, but every word carried a force powerful enough to shake the entire palace. The military power you hold, the royal forces you depend on, the entire game of power you have been playing, everything was created by my own hands. Edmund's face instantly turned pale. His body trembled. All his confidence, all his pride, all the power he believed belonged to him, collapsed in that moment. You thought you had reached the top. Karen's eyes were cold. You were nothing more than a piece I allowed to move on the board. The entire time, you were only performing a meaningless play that I permitted. Edmund stared at him in disbelief. The foundation of his entire world shattered. And just as he was about to collapse completely, a cold, aged voice slowly echoed from the end of the corridor. Yes, the Wolf King has indeed planned for 3 years. But unfortunately, he still made one fatal mistake. The cold, aged voice echoed through the corridor. It instantly shattered the confrontation that had existed on the surface. An old man wearing a dark purple robe slowly stepped forward. Ancient wolf clan patterns, long forgotten by the world, were embroidered on his sleeves. His eyes were filled with the cruelty and calculation accumulated over countless years. He was Marcus, the chief elder of the Wolf Clan Council, the very person who, 3 years ago, personally placed the broken seal upon me and declared my bloodline to be heretical. My entire body went cold. All the scattered pieces of the truth suddenly connected. Edmund's ambition, Selena's arrogance, the Vane family's pressure forcing me into a political marriage. Everything had been a chess game controlled by him from the beginning. Marcus looked across the corridor. His gaze finally landed on Karen. A cold smile appeared on his face. Wolf King, you endured for 3 years. You lowered your own status. You disguised yourself as a beggar and hid within the human palace. All for the sake of protecting an Omega who had already been branded as a heretic. How touching. Karen's aura instantly dropped to a terrifying freezing point. The figure standing protectively in front of me became tense. His voice was cold enough to cut through steel. You'd deliberately framed her. You altered the laws of the Wolf Clan. You joined hands with human nobles to steal power. Your crimes deserve death. Death. Marcus suddenly laughed. His laughter was filled with madness and contempt. The supreme throne of the Wolf Clan should never have been tied down by a woman with a ruined bloodline. You should have eliminated all heretics. You should have strengthened your rule. But instead, you allowed yourself to be controlled by a mate bond. You willingly endured bloodline backlash for her. You abandoned 3 years of governing the Wolf Clan, just because of your feelings for her. I suddenly understood everything. The truth behind the broken seal. The truth behind my so-called curse. It was never my fault. Marcus had fabricated the crime. He feared my hidden ancient Omega bloodline. He feared that my bond with Karen would become a force capable of balancing the power of the Wolf King. So he acted first. He branded me as forbidden. He sealed my bloodline. He turned me into an outcast. All to control Karen's greatest weakness. Me. Marcus had deliberately supported Edmund's ambition. He pushed me into a human political marriage. He wanted to completely sever the bond between Karen and me. Because once I became bound to a contract, the laws of the Wolf Clan would strip away my mate status. Karen would lose control of his own power. And his bloodline would eventually collapse under the endless backlash. Edmund's face turned pale. He looked at Marcus in disbelief. I was your pawn. The power you promised me. The military authority. Everything was a lie. Marcus glanced at him with complete contempt. Fool. You were nothing more than a tool. A useless piece I used to destroy their bond and create chaos. Now that the game is almost over, you have no value left. Selena collapsed to the ground. All of her pride, all of her confidence, all of her schemes, vanished completely. I stood there trembling. Countless emotions surged through my heart. For half my life, I had struggled. For half my life, I had endured. I believed fate itself had been cruel to me, but now I finally understood. From the beginning, I had only been a sacrifice in a battle for power. I stood there, trembling. Countless emotions surged through my heart. For half my life, I had struggled. For half my life, I had endured. I thought fate itself had been cruel to me, but now I finally understood. From the very beginning, I had only been a sacrifice in a battle for power. Karen's voice was filled with a cold, killing intent. Every word carried the weight of judgment. You used her suffering as part of your plan. You forced her into despair. You tried to break my will. You wanted to destroy my throne. Marcus's eyes flashed with viciousness. So what? As long as she carries that broken seal. As long as the world believes she is a heretic, you will never be able to fully awaken your true power. Today, I will kill this so-called heretic in front of everyone. I will cut away your weakness, and reclaim the authority of the Wolf clan. He raised his hand. Dark purple wolf magic gathered in his palm. A terrifying wave of destructive power surged toward me. The killing intent was unmistakable. I instinctively closed my eyes. I thought my life was about to end. But in the next second, Karen turned around without hesitate. Ion. He pulled me into his arms and completely shielded me with his body. He used his own back to take the fatal attack. A heavy impact shook the entire corridor. His body trembled violently. A trace of blood appeared at the corner of his lips. My pupils contracted in horror. Karen. I grabbed his clothes tightly. He lowered his head and looked at me. The killing intent in his eyes was overwhelming. Yet his voice remained gentle. Don't be afraid. I'm fine. But I knew he was lying. The alpha power surrounding him had begun to collapse. The injuries from this act combined with the backlash he had endured for 3 years. The aura of the Wolf King was on the verge of breaking apart. Marcus laughed wildly. The Wolf King is injured. After today, the Wolf clan will belong to me. I want to see how long you can continue protecting her. Just as Marcus prepared to launch his final strike, something inside my body suddenly awakened. The forbidden broken mark that had remained silent for years suddenly became burning hot. The black patterns that had imprisoned me began to fade. One by one, they disappeared. The seal that had trapped my bloodline was not a curse. It was a cage. A cage created to imprison my true power. And now, that cage was finally breaking apart. The moment the seal began to break apart, the entire corridor erupted with unimaginable energy. The dark patterns that had imprisoned me for years disappeared completely. In their place appeared a pure silver radiance. It flowed through my bloodline like a river of stars. The shameful title I had carried for years. The incomplete Omega. The cursed one. The forbidden existence. All of it shattered in that instant. I was never a broken Omega. I was never a disgrace. I was the last surviving ancient supreme Omega of the Wolf clan. A bloodline that had disappeared for thousands of years. A being whose existence would balance the power of the Alpha King and restore order between both worlds. Marcus's laughter suddenly stopped. His face was filled with terror. No. That is impossible. That is the supreme bloodline. The seal I personally created. How could it be broken? I slowly raised my eyes. My voice was calm, yet it carried an authority that came from the deepest part of my bloodline. Because you cannot suppress the will of the moon goddess. You created false accusations. You sealed my bloodline. You branded me as a heretic. But it was never Beck. Oz, I was weak. It was because you were afraid. You feared the power I was born with. You feared the balance my existence would bring. Karen leaned against my shoulder. The violent alpha energy inside him, which had been on the verge of collapse, began to stabilize beneath the silver light surrounding me. His wounds healed rapidly. This was the unique power of the Supreme Omega, the only force in the world capable of healing the Wolf King's bloodline backlash. He lowered his head slightly. His eyes were filled with overwhelming emotion and tenderness. 3 years of hiding. 3 years of suffering. 3 years of enduring hatred from the world. At this moment, everything had finally been worth it. Marcus completely panicked. He desperately summoned his dark wolf power again. I refuse to accept this. My plan to seize power. My decade-long preparation. I will not allow it to be destroyed by you. But the moment his dark energy approached my silver aura, it instantly disappeared. Not even a trace of power remained. I slowly stepped forward. For the first time, I stood in front of Karen. For the first time, I protected him. You used your authority for personal ambition. You framed the royal bloodline. You manipulated both humans and wolves. You used innocent lives as pieces on your chessboard. Today, everything ends. My voice was clear and powerful. It carried the judgment of my ancient bloodline. Marcus's body began to tremble. His dark power started collapsing. The force he relied on to control everything turned against him. He fell to his knees. No. Wolf King, are you really going to allow your mate to execute an elder of the clan? Are you going to ignore the laws of the Wolf clan? Karen slowly stood beside me. His wounds were completely healed. The overwhelming aura of the Supreme Alpha King once again filled the entire corridor. He gently placed his arm around my waist. His gesture was both protective and possessive. The laws belong to me. The rules are created by me. Anyone who harms my mate has already violated the highest law of the Wolf clan. And such a person must pay the ultimate price. As his words fell, the remaining darkness completely disappeared. Marcus collapsed to the ground. His rebellion, his conspiracy, his years of ambition, everything ended in this moment. Edmund stood frozen nearby. His face was completely pale. Only now did he truly understand how insignificant he had always been. The military power he was proud of. The engagement he used as a weapon. The status he believed belonged to him. From beginning to end, they were nothing more than decorations on someone else's chessboard. I lost. I truly lost. He whispered in despair. Selena broke down completely. All her pride, all her schemes, our arrogance, turned into nothing but a distant memory. The old Duke Vane trembled as he finally understood. The person he had abandoned as a burden was actually the supreme bloodline capable of changing the fate of 2 worlds. The greatest opportunity he had ever lost. Karen looked down at me. His eyes were filled with the warmth of destiny. I am sorry you suffered so much. My Isolde. From now on, no one will dare hurt you. No one will dare control you. No more contracts. No more family chains. You are my destined mate. The only queen who will stand beside me. I looked into his eyes. All the pain, all the doubts, all the suffering, slowly disappeared. From the kindness I showed him on that stormy night 3 years ago, to the silent protection he gave me for 3 years. From being abandoned by the entire world, to being chosen by the most powerful ruler alive. My destiny had finally changed. I will stand beside you, I whispered. Oh. Outside the palace, the dark clouds finally scattered. The shadow that had covered the kingdom for years disappeared. The Wolf clan rebellion was destroyed. The human forces controlled by conspirators collapsed. Every secret, every misunderstanding, every scheme, finally came to an end. The false marriage created by politics was erased. The battle for power was over. What remained was only the love destined by the moon goddess. A love that had crossed suffering, betrayal, and countless trials. But at the very moment when everything seemed complete, a voice from ancient times awakened deep within my bloodline. My supreme inheritance whispered, "My awakening is only the beginning." The ancient conflict between humans and wolves, sealed for hundreds of years, has awakened once again because of your bloodline. The true war has only just begun.